Okay,
Here we are, the Noam Siegel Show.
here we are.
The inaugural, no?
Good morning, the inaugural.
Yeah.
We're a minute early, so we'll wait for more people to join.
All right.
But yeah, you're the first one, Matt. We're trying this out.
It's an honor and a privilege, truly. This is gonna be fun. Looking forward to it.
Okay, let's get this started. So
Let's do it.
So welcome to UXR Conversations, where we talk about all things UX research. I'm your host, Noam Siegel, Director of User Research at Wealthfront, and currently on parental leave. And with me today for our first conversation is my friend and former colleague, Matt Gallivan.
Hey.
Formerly of Airbnb, where we met, and Facebook. Matt just left Airbnb after a lovely, terrific 5-year run. And why don't we jump right into it, Matt? It's Corona time right now. We are in a global pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure you're wearing pants. I am. I hope you are.
Absolutely not.
These are strange times, and it's unclear, right? Like what the long-term consequences are, what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you if you feel like this situation we're in will have any long-term effects on how we do research and how we think of connecting with our users, our clients and customers. Do you think that this will change things for us as researchers in the long term?
The only thing I know for sure is that I'm really, really bad at making predictions about the future.
Spoken like a true researcher.
Well, yeah, and my wife loves to lord over me. So I used to work, and my wife also used to work at NPR way back in the day, and I used to write this internal blog there where I would sort of prognosticate on sort of, research data that was coming in about sort of the audience and listening patterns and things like that. And in one of my posts, I sort of wrote about the rise of podcasting and made a prediction that podcasting, it's not really going to turn into anything really big. And this quote got pulled by David Folkenflik, the media correspondent, and he put it into a book, the NPR 45th anniversary. And so now that has been enshrined for the ages, my amazing ability to forecast the future. So I don't know. I think back, 8 years, 7 years to when I was at Facebook, and Steph Carter, who's an amazing researcher who's at Airbnb now, was at Facebook then. She was really banging the drum back then for the whole team to start relying on and leaning more heavily on remote methods. So smart people like Steph have been very bullish on this stuff for a very long time. Frankly, I've always been one of those sort of sticks in the mud who's been very precious about sort of the importance of the nonverbal cues, the body language that you get, especially when it comes to doing in-person qual. Which is not to say that I'm anti-remote research at all. Obviously, it's an incredibly powerful and necessary tool. But these tools have been available for a long time now, and for whatever reason, researchers have yet to become primarily dependent on them. I think, at least in my experience, maybe it's probably different in different shops and agencies, depending on who you're talking to. The level of dependence on these methods there. But yeah, I don't know. The obvious answers would seem to be yes. As people are sort of forced to use these tools and become reliant on them, more comfortable with them, they'll just start baking them into their regular workflow. So much about it is easier and more efficient, faster, better. But people are sort of relying on the things that they know. And I know that, going back to sort of my initial resistance to doing more remote work, I do think there are some signals that you just can't pick up unless you're in the room with somebody. So I will officially not make a prediction here, because whatever I say will be wrong. Yeah,
and it's recorded, so
yeah,
be
exactly,
careful.
exactly.
So you're leaving. You've left Airbnb after an amazing 5-year run.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, when you leave a company, it's a time of reflection.
Sure.
And I wondered if you have any thoughts, any learnings from your time at Airbnb when it comes to research. Maybe something that would be beneficial for research practitioners listening in. Has anything come up to you in the days since you left, which was just a few days ago, I suppose? But been thinking about anything?
Yeah, it has been a time of reflection. A lot of that reflection has been specific to sort of my experience at Airbnb, obviously, and sort of the idiosyncrasies of Airbnb as a company and a culture. As it relates to research, though, gosh, I think the one thing I would say is probably that, especially if you're a more junior person, if you're someone who's looking to get into this field, I think a lot of the content that you'll find about sort of what the nature of the work is like, floating around on the internet is very focused on sort of design research methods, research as sort of a still somewhat new and nascent practice within the context of like a cross-functional product team organization. But I don't know. I've just reflecting on sort of all these different types of research that people can do in industry, whether it's design research or market research or what have you. All these things are blending together, and that was definitely my experience at Airbnb, and definitely what I observed. I think there's a convergence. I think we'll probably stop talking about these different strains. Here I am making predictions again. Like these different sort of subgenres, if you will, of research, and start talking about it just as sort of the practice of knowledge generation and discovery and investigation, right? I think the work that the research team at Airbnb does really runs the gamut in terms of the methods that are employed, and also the questions that they investigate and the problem spaces they investigate. A lot of it, I think, would be surprising to somebody just walking in from the outside. Yeah,
I mean, we've done something similar at Wealthfront. We decided to start a research guild, which is comprised of user research, consumer insights, or marketing research in some cases, and then data science.
Yep.
And I'm big into etymology and the origins of words. Part of the definition of a guild is that there's a shared outcome.
Sure.
What you're doing, and I think if you focus on that shared outcome, rather than the slight differences maybe in the purpose of the research or the precise method you're using, then it makes total sense to bring those teams together. That said, it hasn't been the case in most companies for the past few years. So I'm curious to see if other companies choose to do that. Even at Airbnb, just 2 years ago or a few years ago, those teams were separate.
Sure. Right? Yeah.
So
and it's weird. It's a weird artifact of like legacy, like org structures, and like it's an artifact of what people are used to in sort of their past lives, I think. And it's also an artifact of the fact that like different parts of an organization have different types of research needs. But for whatever reason, companies are slow to recognize that, like, oh, the tools you use to answer those questions are all the same, regardless of where like those answers are bound to within the organization. So yeah.
Talk about research and research evolution. You've been doing this for a while.
Mm-hmm.
I won't say you're a research dinosaur.
You know what? I'm
maybe
getting
whatever
there.
came after
I'm getting
dinosaur. Maybe whatever came after dinosaur, like an alligator or something. Um,
there.
but anyway, when you think about how our practice has evolved,
Mhm.
is there anything that you kind of see that stands out besides maybe kind of the organizational part which you just mentioned? Has
Yeah.
anything else changed? And when you look to the future of our practice, do you see any interesting trend there where the evolution will continue to some interesting place? Again, not making predictions necessarily, but how have things changed for you since the NPR days?
Um, when I was at NPR, yeah, dinosaur, by the way, is totally appropriate.
Which dinosaur would you be, Matt? If you
That's
were
a
a
great question.
dinosaur,
I don't know, a plant eater, I think. I mean,
yeah, that's probably true.
yeah, one of
Not a
those.
T-Rex, not a T-Rex.
Not a T-Rex. I'm not a
Okay,
T-Rex sort of guy.
but going
Yeah,
back to the topic,
coming back to the topic, yeah, you know, I think a lot of user researchers, and I'm going to go back to sort of this relationship between UX research and market research for a little bit. A lot of UX researchers, in my experience, have like turned their nose up at the mere mention of market research, like it's some vastly different practice. But there's a lot we could learn from a more mature field and discipline, which has been around for decades and decades. Namely, sort of commonly shared sort of best practices, standards of excellence, organizations that sort of vet vendors for research quality and rigor. UX research is sort of coming from my perspective anyway. It seems like the practice is sort of emerging from this Wild West phase a little bit, where there's been a lot of really rapid growth. People are doing things in a lot of new and different ways, which is great because there's a lot of experimentation going on. But what you can lose in a situation like that is a sense of rigor, why it's so important to do rigorous research. So I don't know, maybe some sort of shared set of like community best practices might be sort of where we're headed. Maybe the UX research community needs to sort of converge on an idea of how to put something like that into practice. Because if it's out there, I haven't really encountered it. I don't know if you have.
we have an exciting first comment here from Vijay. My organization is going through this specific overlap. So interesting to see. Vijay, if you could mention which organization that is, that would be interesting for us to learn about.
Yeah, and yours is not the only one for sure.
Yeah. And have you recently adopted any particular process or tool which has kind of really leveled up your research, other researchers on the teams you were part of?
No. No. I mean, and that's part of the problem. It's like we're all trying to do our best work in our own way, Yeah. And even these shared tools that we have access to, and that so many people within our community leverage, you're free to use them however you want, right? Like I don't think I'm giving up any state secrets to say that, sometimes, and I know other companies do this, sometimes at Airbnb, Qualtrics would be leveraged for effectively a scrappy product solution if we had the need to collect survey-like data, right? But the ways in which we would go about the data collection wouldn't pass muster in terms of like generating a representative sample, right? So, nothing comes to mind on that front, really. How about you guys at Wealthfront?
Oh, and just by the way, Vijay's mentioning it's WW, formerly Weight Watchers.
Great. Yep. Sure.
And yeah, marketing research, user research, all coming together and trying to work on who owns what.
Yeah.
At Wealthfront, we recently adopted Dscout, which I've used in the past in other
Great.
places.
Yep.
At Wealthfront, most of our research is remote research.
Yep.
It's a good time to be in that boat right now.
Yeah.
And Dscout has been an incredibly powerful tool for us to run diary studies and bring a lot of video content, especially back to our stakeholders. It's a very vivid representation of what your users or your clients need.
Sure.
So I really love that tool. I
Yeah,
wanted to ask you a couple. Oh,
just to
sorry, go ahead.
clarify, like we at Airbnb in past lives, like all of the tools out there, like so helpful in all their ways. What I think my broader point is just like, do you feel like, and I'm sure Dscout provides this as a vendor, but like, do you feel like a junior researcher on your team would be equipped to sort of self-service and like self-educate on the best practices of running a diary study, the do's and the don'ts, right? Because that's the thing about all these self-service tools, right? They're so great, they're so powerful, but they do require some prior knowledge around how to leverage them, right?
They do. And I think we should really seriously consider a lot of our job as researchers and research managers being coaches, being mentors, not just to the members of our team, but also everyone else in the organization who is taking part in research. At Wealthfront, research is very, very democratized.
Yeah.
And I think it's a very important part of our role, which often we don't do well enough at. We have an interesting question here, which we have time for, so let's take it.
Cool.
You and I come from very different academic backgrounds in terms of the disciplines we studied and also level of education.
Yeah.
We have a question here about grad school versus industry experience.
Yeah.
Do you want to comment on that? Kind of what gets valued when you hire the next people for your team? What are you looking at right now?
It will probably not surprise you to hear that I tend to not place as much inherent value on like graduate degrees as maybe some of our other peers in the space do. And that's because I don't have a graduate degree. I didn't go to graduate school. I studied economics. I was an economics and philosophy double major in undergrad. I got into this line of work through a weird confluence of events, as is the case for so many people. But I also would never want to be the person in the room like knocking the value of an advanced degree or a specialized education, right? Obviously, it's valuable. I think there is some sort of middle ground, though. I mean, I think the value of industry experience is only real if you're in a place where you're getting really active mentorship, in a place where you're really actively able to learn things from people who know how to do this stuff well and correctly, right? And I was really fortunate to have great mentors really early on who did exactly that, who ramped me up on a lot of the fundamentals of doing research well. So I don't think it's as easy as saying like, oh yeah, just like get 3 years or 5 years under your belt, you'll be good to go. It really depends. It depends on where you're spending those 3 to 5 years and with whom you're partnering to learn. Because that's the value. It's not the time in the trenches. It's the time spent learning, whether that's sort of in an academic environment or in an industry environment.
Yeah, I think that point about mentorship is incredibly important. Unlike you, I did go down the PhD route. That's what brought me to the US in the first place.
Yeah.
I think that my professors don't, maybe, my former advisor and professors might not feel this way, but I know that they provided me with excellent value and
Sure.
so just countless learnings that did help me in the industry context when it comes to research methods, statistics, and countless other things. And
Yeah.
then there's also the point around internships. And to your point, I think that when you do choose the graduate school route, you can often apply for internships, hopefully get a great internship at a company
Yeah.
where you're provided with excellent mentorship. And if that's the case, you are well on the way to becoming a successful researcher. Um, so I think there's something about the learnings you can get in graduate school, plus the internship opportunities, which it is still a great route.
Yeah.
Um, PhD might be an overkill for people who know they want to be in industry, but I certainly have no regrets about that stuff. And thank you
Yeah.
everyone for the questions. It's really exciting to see the engagement and keep them coming.
One other thing I would say on that front, Noam, is that in my experience, anyway, I have not seen any discernible difference in terms of a person's likelihood to succeed in this role or in this industry. I haven't seen any relationship between that and the level of education, right? So the people who have gotten into this field somehow through, luck, timing, etc., like me, without having that advanced level of education, they tend to perform equally well from what I've seen. So I think there's something to the notion that I think is a really important thing you just said in passing, that PhD may be overkill depending on sort of what it is that you're studying, and where it is you want to go. Yeah.
So I have a couple of core questions here for you. We're actually sitting here because I'm giving a talk in June in the conference that was UXR Conf Toronto and
Yeah.
is now UXR Conf Anywhere. And it's a marvelous conference. If you haven't got your ticket yet, then I suggest you get it. It's going to be a great event. And I was going to have private conversations with a bunch of researchers as inspiration and input to my own talk, and I decided to just share these conversations with everyone. And this talk is mostly for early career researchers.
Cool.
I have a couple of questions for you I wanted to talk about. The first is for the early career researchers out there right now, or people aspiring to enter the field, what's the one thing you wish they'd know before they come to interview for a position in your future team? And this can be based on things you've observed, watching more junior people come interview at companies you've worked for, and it's just something you wish they had known before they gave their presentation and did a bunch of one-on-ones with members of your team and yourself.
The thing that comes to mind is less about the interview process and demonstrable things that they could demonstrate that they know in the context of an interview. It's more things I wish junior people knew coming into the job, full stop. And I think the most important piece of that is that your job as a researcher is to influence people, and the technical skills of doing the research are not even close to being the majority of what the job entails. So much of what you're on the hook for is obviously effective communication, but also a high degree of resilience and a willingness to sort of say the same thing 100 times, 100 different ways until you're blue in the face. The importance of building and maintaining relationships. There are a lot of things that typically soft skills that get bundled under the nasty term of playing politics, which has this terrible connotation because it implies that you're not doing any real work. But no, there's a political element to this job that's really important to master if you want to be effective especially within the context of a large company. You have to You have to be really strategic about who you're communicating with, when, and how. Otherwise, you could be doing the best research work in the world, and it's just going to sort of sit there in a deck and never get put into action at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have a question here from Tiana. What kind of persona, or what is an ideal UX researcher should be in a tech company? I have a slightly different version of that question. I joined Airbnb, among other reasons, because of the mission of belong anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
It really resonated with me.
Yeah.
Who belongs in the profession of UX research?
Yeah.
Who belongs in this thing that we do? What's your
Yeah.
answer to that?
More people than are in it now. That's for damn sure. I mean, and I say that along basically any dimension you could possibly conceive of, and I think it goes back to part of it is that education piece that we were talking about before. I also think that there's a set of professions out there that could be great foundations or backgrounds for people entering user research that are probably not traditionally thought of as being that. I've always thought that it would be great to hire an ex-reporter or journalist to see the lens that they bring to the work, because so much of what you do is sort of investigative in nature, and trying to sort of weave together a compelling narrative about things that are happening in the world that maybe are not visible but are important for a certain audience to know for a certain reason. So yeah, and obviously that extends to dimensions like race, age, take your pick. It's not. I don't know that I've seen a lot of data around this, but from my perspective, working at big technology companies in San Francisco, like not a terribly diverse field. There's definitely progress to be had on that front. So yeah, I mean, who belongs in UX research? I mean, the answer should be anybody who is capable of collecting information in a really smart way, delivering that information powerfully, and influencing people, and also people who care about helping build great products, whether those are digital products or something else.
Great.
Yeah.
Before we end the official broadcast, you mentioned you might be able to stay a bit longer, and we have a few questions here, so we'll take those afterwards. But first of all, if people want to reach you for questions, mentorship, want to join your team, whatever reason it is, how can people reach you?
I have to say that I'm really, really bad at LinkedIn for whatever reason. I don't know. LinkedIn's great, incredibly powerful platform, but like I'm just really bad at being responsive there. Twitter is probably the best place, and my Twitter handle is at @mgallivan. Folks can definitely find me there. That'd be awesome.
Awesome. Well, we will take a few more questions, but I just want to say thank you so much for being in this inaugural episode of UXR Conversations.
It was an honor. Thanks for having me.
We had around 30 people watching this. It might
That's
just
awesome.
be
Amazing.
30 computers my mother owns, or it might be 30 different people. Who knows?
You know what? Either way, I will take it.
Either way, I appreciate it. And I also want to thank everyone who commented and asked questions. We'll answer some more of them now.
Yeah.
Before we end, I do want to say that if anyone wants to join a similar conversation with me and live stream it, then please email me at noamseg@gmail.com, or you can also DM me on Twitter. I'm at noamseg. And thanks for joining again. We're going to have a bunch more of these conversations, including next week, with people from Slack, people formerly from Lyft. More to come, more news to come on the social medias. Let's take some more questions here, because we had a few. We had a question around quant research and can you teach yourself how to be a quant researcher? I believe you're less into the quant side of things. Is that fair to say?
That's fair to say, but I feel like I can hold my own.
Yeah.
Um,
So what do you think about
I
learning how to be a better quant researcher?
I have could actually be a controversial opinion, and if you disagree with it, please, and I'm sure you'll tell me, because
Yes,
you're
I
you.
will.
Yes, you will. My hot take on quant research is that you can deliver 85% of the value knowing 20% of the tricks of the trade. Like if you know the basics about how to sample properly, how to clean your data, how to design a survey instrument in a thoughtful, intelligent way, um, and if you know the basics of how to and not to interpret the data without doing any fancy, t-tests or anything like that, like, guess what? Like, yeah, a lot of very simple descriptive survey data in particular can deliver a ton of value, as long as you know some key pieces of fundamentals. So like, there are people who, of course, like, study this stuff for their entire career, and there are many brilliant people who are much smarter than I am, who are incredible at doing this type of work and much better at it than I am. But I really believe strongly that you can deliver the vast majority of the value with a small overall percentage of the knowledge that a lot of those folks have.
Yeah, I agree, and I'll just add that we're all clearly stuck in our homes for a while.
Yeah.
And if you're not, then please do go home and stay healthy and safe.
Yeah.
Um, and so maybe this is a great time to teach oneself something like quant UX research. There are countless platforms where you can learn all about survey science, data analysis, data visualization,
Yeah.
how not to make pie charts ever. Never use pie charts for anything. Um, shout out to Celeste.
Celeste Ridlin.
A shout out to Celeste Ridlin. Um, yeah, so I definitely think it's a possibility. And yeah, Udemy, Udacity, Khan Academy, all of those platforms.
Totally.
Learn R, learn Python. You can do all of that from the comfort of your home
For sure.
as we isolate ourselves from everyone else. Also had a question about what's a usual day for a UX researcher. Have you had some usual days as a researcher? What do you do? What is it that you do, Matt? Basically,
What is it
what?
that you would say you do here? The last 5 years for me have been people management, which is a totally different day in, day out experience from the experience of being a researcher. And I had I had like precious few moments in the lab, more moments observing. So it's, and the research leadership, depending on the organization that you're in, the context that you're operating in, can just be a lot of meetings, a lot of personnel stuff, a lot of hiring. Hopefully, and that might be less of an issue in the near term future. But yeah, a typical day, thinking back to sort of when I was doing more research, would be a balance between conducting research, whether that's spending time with users in the lab and analyzing data and putting together deliverables to communicate what I was learning with my team, right? And also, like, team meeting time is critical. Like, you have to stay plugged into what's important to the folks that you're partnering with at any given moment. So it's a lot of stuff. It's not hard to fill a day when you're doing this type of work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We need to get back to our kids and everything else going on right now. Maybe we'll take one last question. And you kind of started touching upon this, talking about your experience as a research manager. So this is again from Tiana. What's a career path or career paths for UX researchers? And I think definitely you touched upon one thing, which is kind of the IC versus people manager role. Are there any other facets of career paths beyond those two, or what do you think?
Yeah, and Sorry, I feel like my chin is on this.
Yeah, I'll take this. There you go. Boom. Gone. Saved you.
No, it's a great question. And yeah, I think this is why it's really important for people who are entering this field to think about like what their long-term career goals are. Like if your long-term career goal is to get to the executive suite of a big company, you're going to have to get creative if you're a user researcher. Like you're going to have to find some way to pivot somewhere along the way. Like a lot of these roles, it depends on, again, all this depends on sort of where you're doing this work. But I haven't encountered many, if any, VP level people who do research, like VP of user research. Like I can probably name 2. So there is that ceiling, but again, like most people don't have as a career aspiration like the C-suite of large companies. So that's not really like a ceiling. And even your CEO has a boss. So yeah, finding larger organizations. There are a lot of people, a lot of places are investing in this practice more and more over time. Teams over the long term, despite the situation we find ourselves in now, teams probably will grow, right? And that will mean more leadership opportunities for more people. So start, like, if you get into a larger team context, like move over to the manager track when you get to a level in your career when that seems like a feasible thing to do, and start learning that set of skills, which, by the way, is a totally different set of skills from the skills necessary to be a great researcher. So it's like it's a whole other learning cycle that you start, and it goes from there.
Yeah, I'll just add that titles in general are a tricky thing, right?
Yeah.
They are at the same time both incredibly random,
Yeah.
And on the other hand, they are important and meaningful as well. And I think for me, when I think of career path, I would just encourage people to find places where they feel like they are working on something that is foundational to our society,
Yeah.
that is important, that is meaningful, that is making both an impact outside of their organization and within it.
Yeah.
And if you can find that, then whatever your level, title is, and so it doesn't matter anymore.
Listen to Noam. That was a much better answer than mine.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
It's true. And also,
you know what? Just be quiet. Let's just end there. Let's just end with listen to Noam. Thank you, Matt.
Perfect.
That was
you
great.
For having me.
This was fantastic. Thank you for everyone who tuned in to this. We really appreciate it. Ton of fun. Do get in touch if you want to have a conversation as well, or ask any more questions. And we will see you next time. Have a good day, Matt.
You
Stay
too,
healthy.
Noam.
Have fun.
Love to the family.
Bye
Bye-bye.
for now.